cigarettes curling, smoking his political trap. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. He's a Republican dragon with his truthful slight, fights the battles unseen in the shadows of the night. From policy to passion, he breaks it all down, giving a voice to the voiceless, wearing his crown. Caffeine-fueled mornings, the smoke curls dance, Fluffy at his feet, giving life one more chance. Through algorithms and bias, he cuts straight and clear. Michael's roar echoes in the hemisphere. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. No sound bites allowed is his ultimate creed. A dragon's perspective where facts are the seed. Standing tall on his battlefield of thoughts, guarding the truth that others forgot. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough.
Hello. Oh, are we there? There we go. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. This is No Soundbite. I am your host, Michael Vass. I'm happy to be here with you today. It is Tuesday, September 9th, and it's about 6 minutes after 6 right now. And I know a little bit last minute. It's a very, very sudden show today, and that's in part because the breaking news. And that's what we're going to talk. Breaking news, which, you know, it may tell us what's going to be happening in the near-term future. Because I was looking at the news, and I know there's news about Lois Lerner and the IRS that came out today, and that, you know, justice is finally served after 12 years. It's about time. In that case, there's news that came out today about the leadership of Hamas in Qatar, and that they were targeted and they were bombed. That's big news. There's the announcement by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the IRS, saying that the Biden administration lied, straight up, absolutely lied to the American people. Between 2023 and 2024, there were 1.5 million jobs less than what they reported. They lied about the economy. They lied about the effects of Bidenomics. And therefore, they lied about how well you were doing, and they didn't care. They wanted to win the next election. And so they were more focused on Democrats winning than telling you the truth that America was in trouble and that we needed to change course. We needed to do something very, very different to be able to protect ourselves and to be able to improve the quality of life going forward. They lied about that. So those are all interesting stories. And tomorrow, Wednesday, at about 7 o'clock, I'll do my live stream and I'll talk about some of those issues. What's happening with Hamas and Qatar and the Middle East, what's happening with Lois Lerner, the IRS, what's happening with the U.S. economy, and what this means for the future now that we know there's even fewer people working than we thought there were. We'll talk about all that tomorrow. But today, I wanted to talk about something that I thought was important. Hang on. Where is it? There it is. So I wanted to talk about the breaking news that's coming out of Nepal. And if I can get my system to work here, literally I got everything set up at the last minute. I didn't have a lot of time to prep everything to get ready. At 7 o'clock, thereabouts, my good friend Larry Sharp will be going on live for his program. I'm looking forward to see which story he's going to be talking about, what issues. But I wanted to take a chance because Nepal, a country that most Americans don't know, it's in Asia. It is a relatively small country. It is a very poor country overall. About 1 in 4 people are, well, 1 in 4 are doing well. About 3/4 of the country is poor. And I don't mean poor like in America. I mean poor like the rest of the world. They're very poor. So it's going to be very interesting to talk about this because in Nepal, the Gen Z, kids between the ages of 13 and 28, started a civil war, essentially. They've overthrown the Nepalese government. Yeah, they changed an entire government. Kids between the ages of 13 and 28 started this yesterday. This is day 2. And already the government's in chaos. The prime minister has stepped down. Several elected officials have been killed. In fact, 22 people have died, and those numbers may be increasing. Government office buildings are being burned across the entire country. The military in Nepal is taking charge. We could see a military junta, a very authoritarian government come out of this. We don't know. And you have to ask the question, why did kids 13 to 28 rise up and decide to destroy their government, destroy their country, start essentially a civil war? Why would they do that? Not only why, but could they? And I don't know if that could happen in America. We'll get to that. The question is, can that happen in America? So let me stop for a second. Let me step back. So if this is the first time you're seeing our channel, welcome. We're happy you're here, part of our audience. Whether you're seeing it live or after the live, we thank you for being here with us. We want you to know that we do long-form political commentary. We've been doing this for 20 years now, and we love to come to you. We normally do a very long show on Sundays covering a lot of these issues, and throughout the week, we do shows and interviews, go to events, and do short videos as well about the issues that are affecting all of us. We do that because we believe in free speech. We believe in your right to be able to speak about the issues that are affecting all of us, whether the government likes it or not, whether or not any social media internet overlord likes it or not. We will do this. We've been doing it for 20 years. We're not going to stop. We appreciate if you give us a like, a share, if you subscribe to help us to reach more people. We reach 100 countries on every single video that we do. And we hope that we can grow that and get more people in each of those countries. So we thank you for that. Got to throw that in there because if I don't sell the program, if I don't sell what we do, no one else will, especially not YouTube. So the question is censorship. The question is the global temperature. Are we at a global boiling point? It's about inequality, income inequality. It's about a unfairness in government. It's about censorship. It's about the desire for freedom and corruption in our governments. All of that is what happened in Nepal. It came to a boiling point, and what triggered all of this, and what may happen, we're seeing it get very close in the United Kingdom. They're very close to a boiling point there. And here in the United States, quite possibly, we're getting close to that boiling point as well. And what we're seeing is the government decided to censor and shut down 26 social media sites that that's WhatsApp, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, a couple of others. 26 social media sites were shut down. And the Gen Z youth, those 18 to 13 to 28, they lost their minds. They can't imagine living in a world without their social media. They have to have it. It is a must have. It is for them and for many Gen Z around the world. It is a essential part of their lives at this point. And so they went out. They started rioting. They started burning down buildings. They started attacking their government. And then the government, of course, once they started seeing their buildings start to burn, they saw politicians being attacked and killed. They said, okay, you know what? No problem. We'll turn back on all the social media. You can go back onto Facebook. You can go back onto Instagram and onto WhatsApp. You can go back onto TikTok. Go ahead, go back. It's too late. They reached the boiling point. It tipped over. And the fighting had started already. The revolution, so to speak, had already happened. So there is no going back. And because the Gen Z started that, and part of this was not only the censorship, but what the censorship was hiding, which was income inequality, the haves and the have-nots. See, on Nepalese social media, it's very much kind of like American social media, where we have the housewives of I don't give a damn and programs of that nature. Well, in Nepal, they had similar types of programs, not the same, but similar. And you would see things like on TikTok and Reels and Shorts, you would see that the rich kids, the what they called Nepo babies, Nepo, short for nepotism, the children of the very rich businessmen, the government officials, their kids were flaunting their wealth. They were flaunting their lifestyle, that they were able to go to the best restaurants and have some of the best meals, that they could waste food, that they were with very expensive cars and they're drinking expensive drinks like Louis Vuitton. They're flaunting the clothing that they have, the hotels that they stay at, the vacations that they take. And very often people would comment on that and say, look, here's the son of this minister, one of their elected officials, and he's out vacationing on a yacht. And by the way, the area that minister controls, the kids, very same age as the minister's son, well, they're starving to death in the streets. They're homeless. They have no education. They don't have running water in some cases. There's an abject difference where there's ultra rich and ultra poor. And they were pissed off. And they could see this in real time because of social media. And that's what got the kids boiling. So they were seeing this day after day, year after year. They had this access to see a lifestyle no one in Nepal, the average person, 3/4 of the country, could not live. And these kids, so arrogant, were taking advantage and laughing, literally laughing in their faces. And then the government said, by the way, censorship. You can't talk about these kids anymore. You can't talk about the politics. You can't talk about the poverty, the income inequality, the lack of the inequality of justice. You can't talk about any of this anymore. We're shutting down the internet. And that was it. And they decided to start. And now adults and other groups of opportunity are taking advantage of this situation. And they're going out, and now they started rioting too, seeing that the kids started this, taking advantage of that, and they're helping to burn down the buildings and attack the politicians and try and destroy the government and to replace it with something else. Now, that could mean socialism. It could mean authoritarianism. It could be a dictatorship. It could be a lot of different things. We don't know. But given that scenario of how this happened, why this happened, and then if we look at England, where you have the Ofcom, where they have the Online Safety Act, which is restricting the ability of Gen Z and everyone to be able to see things on the internet, that they're being restricted, whether they want it or not. They're being told, you can't see that. You can't speak about that. You can't talk about that. And many of the Gen Z want to talk about the inequality. They want to talk about the fact that they have a lack of opportunity and some of the problems with the justice system, how some kids of various backgrounds are able to kill and harm other kids, and they get away scot-free. The years of abuse that we had from grooming gangs. And I know that's a word that'll probably defund this video because I even mentioned it, but that's what they are. These gangs in many of these cities that preyed upon young women and sexually abused them for years. And it was covered up by the police. And you couldn't talk about it because if you did, you would get arrested. Even as these gangs and these groups were preying on young women. To talk about the problem would get you arrested, and still can get you arrested in England, in the United Kingdom. That's driving people nuts. And of course, there's also immigration and the economy. There are problems in England as well, but it's again very much the same kind of core problem that is weighing down on the most on apparently Gen Z. They feel like they're the most oppressed group in England at this time, much like in Nepal. Although they don't have the same amount of poverty, they do feel like they have the same amount of oppression, that they're taken for granted. They have no opportunity to escape their lives, the level that their lives are at, and they'll never be able to achieve more. And the haves are just lauding it over them. They're laughing at them. And if that's true in Nepal, if that's true and happening right now before our eyes in England, let's look at the United States. What do we see happening here? Very much a similar kind of situation. It made me decide that I wanted to put out a poll, and you may or may not have seen it yet. It's on my YouTube channel. It's also on my X channel on Twitter. And let me show you. I put up this poll, and it's pretty straightforward. For American Gen Z, if TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram were all shut down, would you burn down local government? Would you riot until they turned it back on? Would you complain to everyone you know, your teachers, your parents, your friends? Would you just verbally have a conversation and scream and shout about it? Or does this even affect you? Do you care? Does it matter whether or not you have an internet or not? These are the choices that I put on X, and these are the choices that I put on YouTube. And for everyone who's Gen Z, please take part in the poll, whether it's on YouTube or on X, Twitter. Go, and especially if you're in Gen Z, 13 to 28, take part in the poll, especially if you're an adult, 18 to 28. Take part in the poll and let your voice be heard. I'm very interested in this because we could see a war in the United States. Think about it. We have colleges and our school systems right now that are pushing the mantra of socialism, but also income inequality overall, something that has been increasing over the recent decades, more than it has than in previous decades, especially because of the growth of the internet and a lot of internet-based businesses. We've seen a lot of people become overnight multimillionaires. And Bitcoin has also fed into that, and the cryptocurrencies have helped to feed into this and create large groups of haves and a lot of people who have not, people who couldn't afford Bitcoin, even pieces of Bitcoin. They can't afford it and they don't have access to it, and other cryptocurrency. Or because they don't have the correct knowledge, they buy a meme coin like Dogecoin, and they buy that thinking it's the same thing as Bitcoin or it will be the next Bitcoin, and it dies on the vine and they lose their investment. And they feel like they've been betrayed, like it's unfair because no one warned them. They didn't give them the same chance to succeed. And we have the colleges, especially the colleges, are constantly telling the kids, they're indoctrinating Gen Z, trying to tell them that America is an evil, horrible, bad place, that corporations are the most evil thing that ever existed. Businesses are all, every business is a mega business and they're all cheating you out of money, and you're losing your freedom. You're losing everything because it's unfair. I mean, that's the reason why Zoran Mandami is running and why he's so popular. No, I'm going to freeze all the rents because the landlords are evil, bad people, and that's inequality. He says, oh, I'm going to open up grocery stores because your local bodega, the local grocery store you have, they're cheating you out of money. They're stealing money from you because they're trying to get rich. That's not true. That's not true. And he's trying to say, oh, I'll make the buses free because you are entitled to have free transportation. And we'll get the money from the rich people, the fat cats. They'll pay for it all. They won't leave. They won't take their money and go somewhere else. No, they'll stay and they'll give you money because it's the right thing to do. They'll just give up all of their wealth. They'll give up all of their possessions that their families have worked hard to get in many cases, and in some cases, maybe not. They're just going to give it all up and give it to you because you exist. That's not real. That's not honest. And that's setting up a false perception. That's a generational lie. We have all the socialists out there, the Democratic Socialists of America and the Indivisible New York and organizations like the Working Families Party. They're promising you, the progressives are promising you, well, if we increase the minimum wage to $30 an hour, it'll solve your problems. Everything will be fair, except everywhere that we have seen this artificial increase in the minimum wage going to $15, $20. Everywhere in the country this has been tried, it has failed. Everywhere. There is nowhere in the country where they've gone to $15, $20, $25 living wage. It has not worked. In fact, it's done the exact opposite of what you were promised. The people who there are a small group of people. First of all, there's only 1.3, 1.5% of the entire working nation, over 100 million people, 160 million people. Only 1.3, maybe 1.5% of them actually get minimum wage. Most of those people are teenagers or the retired, but almost no one actually gets minimum wage. Almost everyone, 95% of America gets paid more than minimum wage, even at the $15 an hour minimum wage. They get paid more. So this won't help. It's not going to make the income equality better. And in fact, based on all evidence that we have seen since 2018, just like has been predicted, it's actually made the problem worse. There's more poverty. There's more unemployment. There's more income inequality everywhere that they've tried that. So when you look at this environment where we have bad economic policies being suggested by some progressive groups, the left, are pushing these ideas as that's going to save your life, knowing full well it doesn't work. But that's the promise. And we have the promise of gender affirmation and identity politics and race relations. We're pushing all of these problems and saying, we're going to fix it. You're going to get everything because you're entitled, this entitlement mentality. And it's not real. It's not a real solution. And that makes people resentful. That makes people angry. It's kind of like, I recently was talking about the inequality for the trans kids that we've, for the last 5 years, with the gender affirmation ideology, we've been telling kids that if they just change their bodies, if they irreversibly change their bodies forever, that all of a sudden, with this new transformation, everyone will suddenly love them. People will want to date them and marry them. They'll be able to have good lives. They'll get great jobs. Everything that's wrong in their life will be better. And we're seeing more and more of these kids who have done this are finding out, no, that's a lie. That doesn't, just because you change your outward appearance, that doesn't change who you are, and it doesn't change the rest of the world. It doesn't mean that you're going to get a better job. It doesn't mean you're going to get a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or you'll be with thing one or thing two. You're not going to be guaranteed a relationship, or that relationship will be any better or worse than what you're doing right now. They're finding that out, and they're resentful, and they're angry, and some of them are finding out they made the wrong choice. And we're seeing that when they come to that realization and they're resentful and they're in pain and they are angry and they are broken, well, that gets us the Tennessee trans shooter. That gets us the Minneapolis trans shooter. We've seen a lot of mass shootings, relatively a large number of mass shootings that are being done by trans individuals. And in each and every case, they found out the promise was a lie, that they didn't get the utopia they were told they were entitled to. And we have a generation of kids that are we're told them, you go to college and you'll get a good job. You'll be able to buy a house. You'll be able to get a family. You'll be able to own some of the things that you see that the housewives of I don't give a damn. You'll be able to own some of the things they own. You'll be able to live like LeBron or Stephen A. Smith. You'll be able to live like these stars that we've told you to emulate and to try and imitate. And they can't. Instead, they've got useless degrees in Africana studies, in gender studies, in lesbian dance theory. I mean, that's a real one. And they've got these useless degrees that do not guarantee them. In fact, they pretty much guarantee you won't get a job. Gen Z is being fired like the entire generation. 50% of the generation is being fired within the first 6 months of them taking their first job because they don't know how to work. But they think they're entitled to getting paid middle-class wages, that they are entitled to work at their own pace. But that's not how the world works. That's not the reality. Again, this is very much like the scenario in Nepal. Minus the fact that, yes, in the United States, the poor in the United States are rich in Nepal. That's true. 60% of, matter of fact, the poor in America, if you're making like $13,000, $14,000 a year, you're richer than 60% of the rest of the world. It's that vast a chasm. So it's not exactly the same as in Nepal, but there is a big difference between, in America, people who are American rich and American middle class and the American poor. There's a big chasm between them. There aren't a lot of people who are rich in America. There's a lot more people who are poor in America for American standards, even though those standards versus the rest of the world are great. But we live here. We're not Americans living in Nepal. We're not Americans living in Angola. We're not Americans living in Chile. Our only frame of reference is our nation. And the kids, Gen Z, they see themselves being cheated out of their future. When I start thinking about all of that, I have to say to myself, we're kind of in the same situation. We have the same powder keg. We could see a war. We could see a civil war start. Now, no, I don't think that Gen Z, even if they were to go out and riot, even if they were to try and burn down government buildings because they don't have their YouTube, they don't have their TikTok, they don't have their Facebook, they've been shut out of social media. And this is a problem of the adults. We fail our kids. They are so dependent on the internet. They're so dependent on social media. And I do know the irony that I'm on social media right now talking about this, but they're so dependent on it. Kids don't know how to, the Gen Z, they don't know how to cook for themselves anymore. They don't even know how to do shopping. They don't go to the store and shop. They order Uber and have the food delivered to them. They have these pre-made meals. How many commercials have you seen on YouTube today alone, in the last hour alone, of pre-made meals delivered fresh to your door? There's a dozen companies that are making chef-made meals, fresh meals, and they'll be delivered to your door. And all you have to do is throw it in a microwave, and you can eat that meal, and it's everything you need. They don't know how to cook anymore. They don't know how to shop anymore. Because quite honestly, those pre-made meals, that's a waste of money. Absolutely a waste of money. Ordering food by Uber, massive waste of money. I never use it. I never would do any of that. Now, I'm way older. I cook every day. I cooked just before I came on live. I had gone to the store earlier today, and I have food for the next 3 days. And I was cooking earlier, just about half an hour before this show. I had just finished cooking and I started eating. And I have food for 3 days. And it cost me less than ordering a McDonald's burger, a McDonald's fries, and having them delivered by Uber. That would have cost me 3 times as much as what I made for myself, sausage and rice. Now, is sausage and rice some kind of special meal? No. Neither is a McDonald's burger. But we have so many people we have trained, the Gen Z, to go and order, whether it's a Wendy's, a McDonald's, a KFC, whatever it is. They'll order food and have it delivered, and they'll pay 3, 4, 5 times as much as just going to the grocery store, buying the food themselves and making it themselves. That's a problem. That's a long-term problem, that they can't feed themselves, that they can't cook for themselves. And at some point, they're going to be frustrated because they will never be able to, if you're watching this now and you're Gen Z, you'll never be able to buy a home if you order Uber for your food 3 times a day. You'll never own a house. That's a fact. You're wasting your money. And I don't care if they make the minimum wage $30, they can make it $100 an hour. It doesn't matter. There could be a UBI, a universal basic income. And if you're spending your money on food made fresh deliveries and or Uber Eats, you'll never own anything. And you won't be happy. I know the saying is amongst the left, you'll own nothing and be happy. No, you won't. You'll own nothing and you'll be miserable. You'll be just like the kids in Nepal. So that concerns me, because it's not that I think the 13-year-olds are going to go out and start a civil war. I don't think the 28-year-olds are going to go out and start a civil war. I don't think they're even capable. I hate to tell you, if you're in Gen Z, and please, if you think I'm wrong, if you're Gen Z and you think, Mike, you have gotten this all wrong, you don't understand, fantastic, tell me why. Please tell me how I am very, very wrong about this. I don't think I am. But I don't think the 28-year-olds in Gen Z, you're not capable of fighting a war. You're just not. You may think you are. You're not. You guys don't know how to. I've looked at so many of the Gen Z. You're barely able to keep your. Many of them are barely able to keep their pants on. They don't know how to use a belt. Sorry, guys. If you can't figure out how to use a belt to keep your pants up, you think I'm worried about you having a war? Yes, in a big mob, they can burn down City Hall. They can burn down a police station. And then the fire spreads. And their community gets destroyed. And they get nothing. And their community is now devastated for the next generation. Because the fire takes down, it's like what we saw in Minneapolis during the BLM riots. Oh yeah, they burned down the police station. They also burned down the entire block. They took out a bunch of people's homes. They took out apartment buildings. They took out the businesses in their community, the grocery store, the mom and pop stores, and some of the chains. And yeah, they got to loot them and take all the stuff out, and nothing ever came back to replace it. There's nothing there. They increased the net poverty for the next generation because it's very short-sighted. Rioting is about the emotion at that moment, not the future, not the consequences. And I think that just like in Nepal, if Gen Z were to suddenly lose their minds because the internet suddenly got shut off, which is probably the best thing we could do for them, quite honestly, is the next thing we see is then you would see the BLM, the Antifa, you'd see the Democratic Socialists of America, these political groups that have been waiting in the wings, biding their time. They want the power. They're more than happy to riot at a drop of a hat. We've seen this. We've seen them riot over and over again. Since 2020, we see riots on a regular basis. We've seen autonomous zones across our country. Even at this moment, there are people on the left trying to create autonomous zones, creating their own fiefdoms, breaking every law you can think of at a local, state, and federal level. They would be jumping in on the rioting of Gen Z, just like in Nepal, just like in the United Kingdom. And that's where you get a civil war. That's how a civil war starts. Not because Gen Z is going to be fighting everyone. Gen Z will give the opportunity. They'll open the door. They will push the nation over the tipping point. And that's how we get the civil war. And the more I think about it, the more I hope that I'm wrong. I want to be wrong about this. I pray that I could be wrong about this, but I don't think I am. I honestly don't think I am. And again, I'm looking forward to hearing everyone in the comments, whether it's live or after the live, because I know I just went on kind of suddenly, but I want to hear what everyone else is saying. I want to hear what Gen Z has to say about this. Tell me. I'm not 13. I'm not 28. Tell me if I'm misunderstanding some of the things that I am seeing. If you're Gen Z, you're 28 and you know how to cook, fantastic. Tell me that you and all of your friends don't use Uber Eats. Tell me that you and your friends don't have ready-made meals delivered to your door. I know a lot of people in Gen Z and millennials, they do. And I see the videos on TikTok and some of the other social media platforms where kids they literally can't make spaghetti. They don't know how to cook eggs. I know people, millennials that I know, they can't cook anything unless they have a recipe that has exact amounts of time. Literally, I've seen them where they have a timer set, and they have a recipe, and they have to follow every single step, and they've got exact times. That's not how you cook, but that's how they cook. And they're not very good cooks, and their food's not very tasty. It's not very good, and often they burn it. Why? Because all they know how to do is follow the recipe. don't know how to innovate. They don't know how to make something just to make it because they're hungry. No, they have to have it has to be mapped out. It has to be detailed. And they're going off of the menu they got off of TikTok or the menu that they got off of a YouTube short. That's not how you live a life. That's not how you live a life of freedom. That's slavery, mental slavery that turns into physical slavery because they're trapped. They can't innovate. And we're seeing this around the globe. The combination of the last decade, maybe 2 decades of education, of elites, academics, teaching kids and telling them that they are oppressed and they're entitled and oppressed at the same time. That, yeah, you're entitled to have everything, all the riches, all the things you see with LeBron James, all the things you see the housewives have. You deserve to have all of that. And at the same time, you're oppressed. You're oppressed because you're a special snowflake. And everyone has to have your feelings and everyone has to be just like you as long as you obey a set of rules that some arbitrary person put out there. You know, well, you're black, so you have to vote in this way. You have to live in this style. You're Hispanic, you're a woman, you have to be like this. If you're a woman, you can't get married. You shouldn't have children. You should be on your own and make a career. By the way, the consequence of that, you're probably going to be, if you ever get married, you'll get divorced within 3 years. If you're living that feminist lifestyle, you'll probably wind up being 35, 40, and you'll be alone. You'll have been divorced at least once. You might have kids, and the father will not be part of the kid's life. And you'll be constantly bitching and moaning about, I got to get alimony, I got to get child support. And you'll never have true wealth. Or you'll be completely alone. You won't be married. And by the way, as you get older, fewer and fewer men will find you attractive and interesting, and fewer of them will be willing to put up with your feminist ideology and the fact that the man should be subservient to you. Fewer and fewer men will want to be around that, to be involved in that, because you're just not hot and sexy enough for it. And so you'll be alone, drinking your wine, living with your cat. In fact, I believe by 2030, 40% of women who are 40 years or older will be alone. It's projected that they will be single. They'll own at least one cat or dog, and they'll be addicted. They'll be alcoholics. That's feminism. That's the consequence of feminism that you're not told about. But yet, you're told you're entitled. You're told that you're oppressed. You're told that it's all about the inequality. But you're being trained for inequality. You're being trained to live in inequality. Oh, wait a minute. We got some comments here. I'm sorry for the delay in seeing the comment, but I have a comment from Dow. And Dow says that Gen Z is split. The ones, where is it? Where's the comment here? Come on, there it is. Gen Z is split. The ones that we see on social media are generally representative of half of Gen Z. The other half are pursuing trades or more traditional skills. You know what, Dow? I believe that. I don't want to make it seem like all of Gen Z are monolithic. I don't. I know there are people who are outliers, but what we see and what the trend tends to be and gets reinforced, we're seeing the type of Gen Z that I'm speaking about. The ones that feel that they're entitled and that they're impressed, and everyone has to bend to their will, and they are being more and more frustrated, and they're more and more part of the rioting that we're seeing across this nation for a dozen different reasons because of their frustration levels, because the promises that were made to them have failed. And that's exactly the recipe that led to Nepal burning as it is right now. And part of the reason why England is falling apart right now. And so that's why I'm concerned about it here in the United States. And I'm trying to get an understanding of how close are we to being just like them. And I think we're very close. But I do appreciate and understand that there is that difference. We also have a comment from Mark Ellett. I believe it's pronounced Mark Ellett. And Mark, by the way, thank you for being on the program today, for watching, if you still are. I appreciate you. I don't think I've seen you on comment ever before, so thank you for being part of my audience. Mark says, as a Gen X, I'm on the side of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Okay, I really don't know what that means. Call me a boomer, and I am, I'm sure, but I don't understand what you mean by that. I don't understand what you mean by you're on the side of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. I don't know. And he goes on to say, at least they don't pearl clutch so much over hypothetical issues. If I'm understanding correctly, and I may not, but as I understand, Gen Z and Gen Alpha are more traditionally conservative. They are learning how to cook. They are going out and shopping. They are getting more traditional jobs. They're going into the trades. They're doing the jobs and the lifestyle that we had back in the 70s, the 80s, not even in the 50s. And they're doing well. They're beginning, or at least we believe they seem to be doing well. And they have less interaction online. They're less social media dependent, which means they have more freedom and they're having more success. I don't know if that's enough, because I know some of them are, but there's still a lot of people who are addicted to the internet. They're addicted to social media, and they're being used by social media, being indoctrinated into these groups like the Democratic Socialists of America, like BLM, like Antifa. They're being, and you could even say they're being on the other side. Maybe even you could say on the alt-right, which really doesn't exist, but they are growing. So it's left and right for Gen Z, and I think part of at least Gen X, and part of at least Gen Z and Gen Alpha. I could be wrong. If I am, let me know. But that, I hope you're right, Mark. I hope you're right. Dow goes on to say, to clarify, half of Gen Z projecting themselves on social media are those with the ignorant and the entitled. He goes on to say that it's also true that they are fatigued with the adults lying to them all, so they approach the future with heavy skepticism. So maybe this is where, again, I didn't plan out what I was going to say in this live stream or how it would go forward. But I think that there's a very real possibility that we could see Gen X convinced, Gen Z convinced by people on the internet that because they didn't get everything that was promised to them, because of all the promises that they heard from their teachers, the promises they've heard from politicians like Zoran Mandami, when they fail, in California, Gavin Newsom, the $20 minimum wage actually increased poverty in California. That is a fact. We covered it before on this program. We've seen that in Washington, and we've seen that in New York, in Austin. These kids, because they've been indoctrinated, because they've been convinced that they're entitled, and now they get that resentment, like we see with the trans community. A lot of younger people are being disillusioned. We could see them riot in a way we've never seen before. I mean, this could become bigger than what we saw with BLM. And then we will see, just like with BLM, there were people who abused that opportunity. All of the arson that happened because of the BLM riots, it wasn't because of all the BLM people. A lot of people believed in BLM. They believed they were doing the right thing. They thought that this was going to be a positive change. And it wound up that people took advantage of them and that opportunity, and they broke into stores and were stealing. They were committing arson. They committed murder because they had the excuse. They had a mob surrounding them and they felt immune. Now imagine that with an entire generation of Gen X, Gen Z. Imagine their entire generation being used by a small group of people with political agendas that they just want to take over the government, that they just want to take over business. They want to control things, and they will use this young generation, 13 to 28, and use them, an entire generation of kids, to make themselves wealthy and to have power and to destroy the foundation of our country. And I have to say, if America falls, there is no one to replace us. Once you lose the right, as an example, you lose the right to free speech, no one's going to give back to you. And there's no country in the world that you can go to where you will get as much freedom of speech as America. You may think socialism is a great idea. There is no socialist country in the world that has as much freedom of speech as here in America. You may think that you should have part of the wealth of the rich. There's no one as rich as the people in America as an overall community. There's no country with more wealth in their population. Our quality of life is virtually unheard of when combined with the freedom that we have. We're not a class society. You're not born into nobility. You're not born into riches in America, but you can become rich. Anyone can. And there's no one else that will replace it. But it's in danger right now. And I think we could see people become inspired even by what's happening in Nepal, what's happening in the United Kingdom. We could see that inspire a swath of the generation, Gen X, Gen Z. It could inspire them to go out and riot, to go out and start the conflict. And I don't think anyone's ready for where that leads. I don't think anyone's ready for the kind of devastation that results from that. That's my fear. And that's kind of why I want to understand, are we close to that? Am I just afraid? And I'm just, it's without basis. It's without any reason. Maybe it's just me overthinking the situation. I would hope that that's the case. I want that to be the case. I'd love to be reassured. I'd love to have 1,000 people in Gen Z, Gen X, that they respond to the poll and tell me, Mike, you just don't understand. We don't care about any of that. It's not, yeah, there are problems, but we're not, just because you take away our social media, we're not going to lose our minds. We're not going to start a war in America, which would then spread. And that's the thing. It won't just stop in America. If we have Gen X, Gen Z, that if they're up and fighting, if they're the core group that sparks a civil war, where Antifa decides to take the opportunity, since the youth are rioting, they're going to go out and they're going to do their rioting, and they're going to go kill some of the politicians out there because they don't like them. They don't like their policies. You're going to see some of the leftists out there, they're going to go and they're going to create an autonomous zone because of the rioting. And they'll take advantage of that to try and capture cities and sections of cities, as we've seen in Minneapolis, in Brooklyn, in Austin, in the Capitol Hill, the Chaz. in Seattle and in Portland. This will happen. Let me see what we got as a comment here. So Dow's got a couple of comments. He goes, Dow says, I saw reporting that Gen Z is also at a point as a majority. They are not willing to start families and perpetuate the species. They aren't incentivized enough to be willing to participate in society. And see, that's the problem. If you don't see enough of a future to have a family, if you don't see enough of a future to do something in society, that society dies. If we don't have the next generation being born, the country becomes unsustainable. And I know there's some people, believe it or not, there are eco-fanatics out there, climate change believers that are so dedicated to it. They're happy. They don't want Gen Z to have kids. They don't want women they want women to be feminists. They want women to be single and have cats and alcoholism, because that means there's fewer human beings on the planet. That means less pollution. Therefore, the planet will be saved. Humanity will die. Countries will fall. But the planet will be great. Trees will grow everywhere because human beings will die off. There are people that are eco-fanatics that believe this, and they're happy. They've been pushing policies hoping that people will become self-sterilizing so that they will never have another generation of kids, so that the planet will have less human beings. They're scary, but they exist. And countries will collapse if we don't have that next generation. It's not like the snap in Marvel in the MCU, where suddenly half the population of planet Earth disappeared overnight. People would die by the tens of millions. We can't survive. We built the world to be able to survive with 8 billion people. Now, could we survive with 7 billion? Absolutely. Would the world continue as we know it with 4 billion people? No, there'd be absolute devastation. People would be starving every country in the world. There would be wars across the world for resources, because we wouldn't be able to function. And Gen Z is being convinced that's what should happen. With them not participating in society and not having relationships, interpersonal relationships, they're not having kids, they're not moving forward. We're falling closer to a societal collapse. Whether that starts because someone cuts off social media, or there just aren't enough kids to go out and work a farm, to go and become electricians and keep the electricity on, not enough kids to replace the power lines when they go down because of a storm. It doesn't really matter what's the reason. The end result is still the same thing. That scares me. It also scares me because if we have an entire generation, Gen Z, or a good part of Gen Z, the majority of Gen Z, that don't know how to interact with other human beings. All they know how to do is type on the internet, how to send a text, send an emoji. They have to use things like Grammarly to speak to other human beings. That again leads you to, they can't continue. That means we break down as a society. They're more likely to have psychopaths and sociopaths. That will become more and more prevalent. And we will see more and more people doing mass shootings and using cars as weapons. And these attacks, we will see more of them because they can't communicate. That's not a society. Okay, let me go on. Dow says, as it is currently is. So Gen Z will either spiral into degeneracy and entrapment of authoritarian ideology, or they remove themselves as much as possible from the current system and form a parallel system, which is also a problem as much as anything else. Dow finally says here, uh, one that's far more insular and segregated from the larger whole. America cannot exist as two separate societies. It won't work. The country will fall apart. If we try to have two different societies, a society that actually talks and has kids and has traditional values, and an entire society that doesn't talk to anyone, doesn't know how to talk to anyone, doesn't know how to create anything, doesn't know how to build anything, you can't have a functional society. That will break down. There will be wars. There will be a civil war. We will turn into Nepal because the ones that do know how to do something, they become like the elites in Nepal, and they will have more wealth, and they will have more luxury, and they will have more food, and they'll be able to own the houses, and the rest won't. And the ones that don't will be resentful, and they will eventually rise up. Mind you, I'm a conservative talking about this. I'm very much a conservative Republican. So I have my solutions for all of this aren't necessarily, talking about income inequality isn't a left or right issue. It's a reality. It exists. How do we fix it? It's not through entitlements. It's not through minimum wage quick fixes that don't actually help people and actually create a bigger problem at the end of the day. It's not being Zoran Mandami promising that if I open up a grocery store that's government run, that'll fix all your food problems. It won't. That's not a realistic answer. And that's not going to deal with the income inequality. We need more manufacturing in the United States. We need more electricians. We need more machinists. We need more carpenters. We need people who actually make things in America because they have the skill and they have the desire. That's what we need. We need more families. Nothing is more inspiring than the necessity to know that your kid is going to starve unless you go out and find a way to make money legally, to make money, to get a job, to create a business so that you can feed your kids. There's nothing more inspiring than a father, a mom, a family that are working hard so that they can feed their kids. That will inspire people to make money. That will end income inequality. But that's not where we're going. That's not what kids are being taught in school. I don't know. Look, I wasn't planning to be on long tonight. As I said, this was a last minute desire to speak with people to get some feedback, and I'm getting that. And I want to thank Mark, who's the first time speaking on the channel. Thank you for that. And for Dow, who's commenting. I have to think more about this, but I think this is a legitimate fear that we should have in this country, and we need to have a conversation. No, I don't think that, no, we shouldn't shut down all of social media. And censorship is effectively doing that. We're seeing that with the YouTube AI age verification. They're shutting down channels. They're hiding things, conversations from the public. Channels like mine are being hidden and thrown away by YouTube so that we can't have this conversation. We need it. I know some people will say, I don't like that conversation. I don't agree with you, Mike. I don't like what you said. That's okay. That's okay. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with me. But we do need to have this conversation because we do need a solution. We are getting closer to what happened in Nepal than we are to a utopia promised by people like Zoran Mandami or AOC or Jasmine Crockett. We're nowhere near the utopias they are promising, and we are absolutely closer to the civil war that's happening in Nepal. So we need to do something. We need to have this conversation. Cal says it's about shifting culture. We need to shift culture to celebrate skill, merit, grit, integrity, ruggedness, and self-sufficiency. To do that, we need to end the current feminism and Marxism. I agree with you. I 1000% agree with you, Daniel. I think that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. But that's not what Gen Z are seeing on the internet. That's not what's on TikTok. That's not what's on YouTube Shorts. That's not what's being promoted on Instagram. That's not what's in the schools. And I think we need to have that message out there. Okay, I need to think more about this. But again, I will ask for those who are watching this, whether you see it live or if you see it after the live, please take an opportunity to go over for the next day or two. There is a poll on X. The link will be, you can go to my X channel, MV Consult. You can take part in the poll. It's also on YouTube, the exact same poll. Please do answer the poll. Please do, if you know other kids who are Gen Z, have them take the poll. Let's get an answer to understand how bad this problem might really be. And tell me your thoughts in the comments. Ask everyone in Gen Z. Tell them if they think I'm wrong, that's fine. I'm thick-skinned. If they say you're just a boomer and you don't get it, okay, why? Don't just tell me that I'm a boomer. Tell me why I'm wrong if you think I'm wrong. Tell me why you think we couldn't have a civil war. Tell me why you think Gen Z wouldn't riot. Tell me why you think things are going to be better under socialism or any of the other things that are being promised to kids in terms of entitlement. Tell me why that's going to be a better utopia than I understand, because I don't see it. Let's have that conversation. Convince me. I'd like it. I'd like to be proven wrong. But I think we are closer to the cliff than we are to salvation. And Nepal is the most obvious and clear indication of how bad off the first world countries are right now. And Nepal is that's not even a first world nation. That's a second world nation. It's not as bad as some of the third world nations out there. It's not like Mozambique, as an example. It's not like Venezuela, as an example. It's a second world nation. And if they're going through this, imagine the rot that's happening in the first world, in France, in Germany, Poland, England, Canada, the United States. Well, like I said, we know what's happening in England. We're seeing it fall apart before our eyes. How long until that's America? I don't think very long at all. Let's have the conversation. If you think I'm wrong and you're Gen Z, tell me why. I want to hear your voice. I want to hear what you are seeing and what you're thinking. And maybe we can all work out a solution that works for Gen Z, that works for Gen Alpha, that works for Gen X. Let's find a solution. We won't get there if we don't have the conversation. So share this and let's have that conversation. All right. With that said, I'm going to take off. Thank you for joining me for this breaking last minute show. Please like, share, subscribe if you get the opportunity. Please consider joining my Patreon, or you can do a PayPal or super gift, whatever you'd like. Any support helps the channel. Most of all, you can just like, share, and subscribe. It really does help. It really does make a difference. I appreciate that. I look forward to seeing you again. I will be on tomorrow, either doing the Liberty First Foundation panel discussion, or I will be live on my own. Either way, I will be there. We have something coming up on Thursday and Friday that'll be special events. I'll talk to you more about them tomorrow. But until then, thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you're going to be great. And for the people in Nepal, I hope you get peace. I hope the kids will be safe. I hope the fires die down and that a better government comes out of the ashes of the end of this government. I'll talk to you again soon. What's up with this computer? It's not ending. It doesn't want me to end. It wants the show to go on forever. Yes, my computer's acting up. I can't turn off the stream. That's funny. Oh, come on. Wow. I can't get my computer to stop.